Hello, Internet. I've been watching Mr. Peterson's videos lately. Actually, I've seen him for the first time a couple of weeks ago, and I figured he's wrong. And I'm gonna lay out my case in a minute, but I kind of want to give you a little bit of a history. If you do not kind of follow this entire scene right now that's being created in the social spectrum. So let's start with the SJWs, or the Social Justice Warriors, which is a group of people who believe they're being victimized, or are victims, or are people who try to protect those victims in such a way that that satisfies them and gives them gratuitous self sort of empowerment, I suppose, or something like that. I don't know. But these are the SJW groups. So once you have that whole thing, which in my opinion has existed for about 50, 60 years, give or take, I'm not sure. Again, I haven't done extensive social research, and that is not the point of this video, because the flaw in Mr. Peterson's logic is very apparent even without the research, at least in that sphere. Okay, so after you got the SJWs, what happened next? You had the alphabet people, which would be the sexuality guys, right? You'd have the lesbians, the basically all the other genders, like gays, bisexuals. I think transgenders are there right now, and others may be added. I'm not sure. I don't know how many people are there and what kind of alphabet they have, but in general, there's a lot. So we're going to call them the alphabet people. Then you've got the racial group. These are all the minorities, the perceived minorities at least. You got the blacks, the reds, the oranges, the purples, the Asians, the Mexicans, the Brazilians, the Africans, the Australians, etc., etc., etc. These are the people who, of course, believe they're being victimized. So they're kind of like the SJWs, but they're being victimized. Actually, exactly like SJWs. They're being victimized based on their nationality or the color of their skin. Of course, the alphabet people are being victimized based on their sexuality. And then you have the feminists, which are kind of like the other, but they're a little bit more crazy because they seem to think that an entire gender is actually their enemy. So the entire female gender is the victim, and all the males are the enemies. So they're kind of in that soup as well. And then you've got the MGTOW, which is the counter to feminism. This is basically the polar opposite of feminism, where it stands for men go their own way. And apparently, now I didn't know that, but apparently there's actually a name for doing your own thing. Can you believe that? I mean, you live in such a world, so enjoy it while it lasts. Now, this is, of course, fine by me. People can call their activities or hobbies or their sort of tendencies whichever way they want. But in this particular group, there's been quite a lot of people, especially males, who either go full hardcore and do not even approach or have any sort of interaction with females, which is, I think, not good because you can get a really valuable perspective from a female sort of viewpoint. Because to be fair, they sometimes have, females sometimes have very unorthodox solutions, which most of the times are stupid, but there's always this one time when, oh my God, that's genius, right? And that's not to say, of course, that there aren't any smart people, but smart females, but generally speaking, males and females think differently anyway. Now, this whole bubble of people, this entire mass, this tumor on society, that has been created by the amalgamation of all of these groups together, and I think that's all of them. I don't think there's anyone left to add. But God forbid if you're black, gay, and a feminist, and somehow also in the MGTOW. But the point is, of course, that the MGTOW guys are kind of they have their own extremes, so that's why I lump them in there as well. There's probably other groups. I don't know who else would actually qualify for this entire Babylonian tower of shit, but if you can think of someone, he's probably there, or whoever it is. Now, Mr. Peterson's solution to this social bubble of people, this balloon of farts, is to pluck people out of it, thereby reducing it in size. So there's less people in that entire society of cretins, and he wants to give them his advice or make them basically see the actual world around them, because the people in this sort of area, they live in their own world. They deny reality, and they do everything in their power to change it. And then because means that of course means that they have ideological views, something that Mr. Peterson does not like, which I completely agree with that. And his solution to the problem is write a book, 12 Rules of Life, talk about things that 20 years ago were common sense, but right now are seen as revelations. And that's the reason I'm making this video, because I just couldn't. That's the reason I actually went and looked at all of his videos, because the feedback and the comments and people there acting like it was some kind of a revolution, an intellectual revolution, when the man says very simple things. And I think he has his own flaws in there, at least when it comes to psychology. Now, of course, I'm not a psychologist, but it seemed very strange to me that very late in his career, he discovered that he had a dark side. That he was a bad person, as in he wasn't only good. And that just blows my mind, that you could actually think that you would study other people's behavior without first analyzing your own capabilities, and perhaps, finding the primal in you and realizing that, yeah, you could just, take someone's skull and bash it against the wall, or, deal some serious damage and go completely savage at the snap of a finger, or maybe if the circumstances are right. But if you don't realize that, then there's nothing I can tell you there. But anyway, Mr. Peterson realized it, and he was talking about this. It's just one side note here. I'm kind of tangenting off the main topic, but that's what I was trying to say, that even as a psychologist, of course, he's not perfect, and he makes some interesting discoveries later down his career path. Now, my point here is that the guy is just fighting a futile war, really, because his approach is very simple, right? It's very naive, if you ask me, but that's just my viewpoint. But he's saying, sorry that I'm looking that way, but this is the screen and this is the camera, and I'm doing this on my phone, if you hadn't realized by the camera shaking, so you're going to have to excuse me. But my point still stands. I think he's a very naive, sort of good guy. He really tries to save as many people from this delusion that they live in by logically, and I have to give it to him. I mean, the man has a way with his words. Linguistically speaking, he's in the upper echelons of all those involved in the humanitarian arts and disciplines. But no matter how many people you pluck out, you have to pluck out more people than people join. You see, I highly doubt that his conversion rate to, from a cretin to at least a normal thinking person is 50% or more. Now, 50% would be a stalemate, right? So he turns more people to, he turns more people's brain on, and there's just as many people who go in there because of the lack of education or whatever. Their brain is just. I'm going to talk to you why I think, what kind of reasons I think this causes it. But that's his approach. So it's futile, I think. No matter what he does, 3 million, 4 million, 10 million sales of his book, 20 million sales. How many do you think he needs to have this revolution that everybody seems to think that he can start? No. It's not going to work. It's not going to work. The grinder is already working at full speed, and you can throw a bone in there. It might give it a bit of trouble to grind it out, but eventually you'll spit it out as mince. So I don't think he can stop it, and I think he knows it. And you could actually, by the way, tell it by his face. As if you look at his interviews and all of his videos, as time progresses past that infamous interview with that woman, not a very smart woman. I don't know her name. I forgot her name. I don't care. Her name doesn't matter. She's irrelevant. The point is that after this particular incident where it went viral, he became popular, and now after every single interview, I mean, his face is just draining more and more of blood. I mean, the man is getting tired of this, I think. And I wouldn't blame him. Everything he says, like, see the pauses between his words. You can tell when he's thinking. Every time he says something and he pauses, that means he was about to say something that could be twisted around against him. Either that, or he generally actually tries to come up with the word that he needs to say. But I highly doubt it, because his lexicon is highly, better than mine, definitely. But his lexicon is much better than most people. So I don't think he has trouble with finding words. But I think these pauses are for him to properly articulate himself so that he cannot be driven in a corner, so to speak. And people are preying on him. I've seen these reports, NCBCP, all them news media guys, and they're just reporting the hell out of the guy. And his face is that of a tired guy. I think he's tired of that, and I don't think he's gonna last another 2 or 3 years. I think they'll get him. They'll get him. They'll either drive him insane, or I don't know. Maybe he'll just quit. And I hope he does that. I hope he just stops his crusade against stupidity, because it's ineffective in my opinion. Okay, now I've basically talked about Jordan Peterson quite a lot without actually stating my own viewpoint on the matter. So here it goes. Now, Mr. Peterson and his approach is that of a humanitarian. He seems to think that the origin point, sort of the core of this tumor in society, is caused by ideologies, a lack of education, or at least poor education, and some kind of indoctrination in an ideological sort of dogma, or basically into a cult or fanaticism. And I think he's wrong. It's not a humanitarian problem. It's an economical problem. Now, this might sound like a leap of logic, but just bear with me. And this is why Mr. Peterson's attempt is futile, and this is why he's also wrong, is that for this bubble of denial to exist, something needs to create the conditions for that bubble. It started on the West. It spread around the West, so Americas, Canada, obviously, England, Europe. I'm not sure what the status quo is in Brazil. I think so. South America is still it still retains some kind of sanity, but that's because of an entirely different mentality and culture. So the entire West is probably already contaminated beyond redemption with this plague. And of course, you got all sorts of things surrounding it, right? Not just the social structures and the entire social tension situation that either exists right now or is being fabricated by people, but there's also all these racial tension, religious tensions between religious groups, right? So you got the Muslims on one side, you got the Christians on the other side, and then everybody else in between gets crushed in this vice grip. Okay, now why is this economic again? The reason is America. Now, before you go and say, oh yeah, America's the Americans are the ones that did it. They're all assholes. No, you see, America was an awesome place 50, 60 years ago when you actually had when it actually was a country. Right now, it's a much more different beast. Economically speaking, America has a huge debt crisis, and I know you probably heard this 100 times, but it's not the debt that this video is about. The fact of the matter is, debt means that people have money they shouldn't have, and the fact that currently their population cannot repay it means that the government has basically, not the government, but the federal bank, which is privately owned, by the way, has turned on the keys for the printing press and thrown them away, which means that there will be no repayment of the loan, which means that you get to spend as much as you want, max out as many credit cards as you want. Yeah, you might go to jail, but generally speaking, you'll be fine as long as you don't go overboard too much. As of this date, what is this? The 3rd of May. Sorry, let me just unlock my fucking. Yeah, the 3rd of May. Sorry, guys, it's 1:53. I'm kind of tired from a long day, but let me just finish my thought here real quick. So, as of today, America has about $3.5 trillion in credit card debt only. Just the credit cards. Altogether, it's about 22 point something trillion. Probably higher by the time you're watching this. Maybe the economy already went to shit. I don't know. What I'm here to say is that this kind of environment creates the right conditions for such a bubble to exist. Why is that? Well, because if you live in a society where abundance is not available, and I mean that by, let's say, if you want to have milk in your fridge, you have to work. If you want to have a roof over your head, you have to work. If you want to drink some water, you have to work. You want to have lights on, you have to work. So everything you do in order to survive and live your life uninterrupted and have the supplies that you need for that, in order for you to actually be able to do that, you need to provide something in return to society, be it some kind of a service or produce a good or maybe distribute something, which would be also a service, by the way. So you have to actually do something. Now, the American system, and by proxy, by the way, the entire Western system, almost the entire Western system, has created this state where the government takes care of you if you can't take care of yourself. This means that you get shit for free. Now, of course, you're not going to be sitting in front of your own mansion and sipping 20-year-old whiskey, but chances are you're going to have clean water, you're going to have some kind of basic food, like you're going to have access to bread, you're going to have a roof over your head, there will be lights, and you could probably afford a cold beer every now and then. So the basics of life are covered. You're no longer pressured to do anything in order to survive. Now, this means all of a sudden that if you do not have the brain power or the imagination or the desire or the interest or anything really, like if school failed you, you couldn't get interest, you couldn't get interested in anything, then your brain doesn't have anything to think about. And human brains don't like being idle. Idling is not an option. With an environment where no problems are presented, the brain will invent its own problem. Don't quote me on that. I haven't researched that. That's from what I've seen from people around the place. I like to look at people, observe them. It's interesting, you know. Be interesting what kind of stuff you learn just by sitting on a bench. Anyway, Mr. Peterson probably has a much more in-depth knowledge of this kind of thing, but my guess is that this is what's happening. When there's no problems to be solved, your brain will invent a problem. The simpler the problem is, the easier it is to fix, and the more straightforward it is, the more assured you are going to be in your quest for solving that problem. What do I mean by that? Okay, let's just imagine for a second that you live in a public housing, your health is being taken care of, you have the basics, right? I mean, you've got light, water, bread, a roof, obviously. Then you could go out, right? You could go out, you could vote, and you can do a lot of things, in fact, without doing anything else, pretty much. So what are you going to do? Well, let's see. Are you going to learn a new instrument? Are you going to learn a martial art, maybe? Are you going to learn a new language? Maybe a new skill? Maybe do some DIY work? Maybe try to freelance? Maybe some woodwork? Maybe blacksmithing? Maybe try to jump with a parachute? I don't know. Anything. Fly a helicopter? I don't know. Learn a skill, practice it. Maybe learn another skill, practice that. In an age of information, all you got to do is pay your internet bill, and then you've got the entire Alexandrian library pretty much under your fingertips. Now, of course, not everything you read on the internet is true, but I mean, just cross-reference, do your research, read some journal articles, you'll be good. Are you going to do that, which does not present itself with a problem, so are you going to invent a problem to present to your brain in order to solve, such as, I'm going to learn programming, maybe I'm going to learn how to 3D model, maybe I'm going to write a book, maybe I'm going to do a script, maybe I'm going to try to be an actor, anything you want. That, or if you don't do any of that, and if you don't give your brain a problem to solve, what's going to happen is your brain is going to tell you, dude, look at where you live, man. Look at where you live. Oh my God. How can we improve our current living conditions? Oh, gee, I don't know. I mean, currently I'm only stuck with cold beer, but I want to drink some whiskey. What do you mean I can't drink any whiskey? This world is cruel. We need to change the world. And there you go. That's how it goes. So your brain, at least the idiot's brain, will probably figure out that the world is the problem of his predicament. And this, by the way, I completely agree with Mr. Peterson on that these people are completely in denial. But yeah, this is what I think happens. So they, off of that trampoline, then jump up and turn into SJWs and just continue on that path, whether parents are guiding them by being stupid parents, or they just guide themselves, or the school guides them, or maybe they're in a group that moves together. Group mentality is vastly different from an individual one. I mean, I've seen people who are just completely different in a crowd. It just blows my mind. And considering that the internet is a huge crowd, I'm not surprised that things devolve rather quickly when it comes to individual debate or any kind of thought, really. I mean, the internet is pretty much the cesspool of society, and it kind of shows, because when you're behind a keyboard, a lot of people say things that they wouldn't have either the balls, the gall, or even the capability to say to someone in their face. So, behind the keyboard, people reveal their true selves, and unfortunately, 99% of this population is just humans are cowards in general towards each other. Anyway, that's another off topic. So my point is that this problem is economic. Now, how would I fix it? Because obviously I'm criticizing Mr. Peterson's efforts, and I'm probably, in other people's eyes, maybe making fun of them, but I just don't understand. I mean, he's a really good guy, if he's trying to do that, because in my opinion, that's naive and wasteful of time. But then again, that's his profession, so I suppose group therapy, I don't know. But my solution would be just to let them burn. Yeah. Now, what do I mean? Of course, I don't mean go and torch them, because there's quite a lot of people, and you do need to somehow get rid of corpses, etc. So you don't want to do that. And violence is kind of counterproductive, generally speaking. Whenever you try to create some kind of violence, there's always collateral damage and actual damage, and it's just counterproductive, right? So what does this whole thing mean? Well, because the economy is going to collapse eventually, especially considering that it's heading that way. Once that happens, once the dollar crashes and gets rejected as a world reserve currency, which it will happen, like there's no way it won't happen, this bubble will get burst, because all of a sudden the conditions for the existence of this group will be gone. There'll be no bread in the stores. There'll be no food. There'll be nothing. right? All of a sudden, you're going to realize that you don't have a house anymore. You can't live anywhere. You can't even find a job even if you wanted to because you don't have the skills. So these people will literally starve to death or get trampled or will steal or, they'll try to survive somehow. But at the end of the day, most of them will die. Only those who actually have some inert brain power and learn to utilize it or at least activate it when shit hits the fan, then those will survive. And then that bubble will be gone. You will no longer have problems because once people actually realize that, dude, I need to secure some food or need to get some water, I need to do this, that, and this, they're not going to be too worried about these perceived inequalities in the world. And to be fair, I really don't think there's that many inequalities right now. I mean, in a truly capitalistic society, whether you're black or red shouldn't really matter. As long as, let's say, you're a software engineer and you go and apply for a job and you get refused by, let's say, Microsoft. If you're a really good engineer, like a software engineer, like a programmer, you go to Apple and they hire your ass. So now Microsoft lost, obviously really good. By really good, I mean like at least above average. So you have to work lower for lower pay and do a better job than your competitors. Now, if you do that, whether you're black, red, orange, or blue, it shouldn't matter because sorry for the shaky cam, I'm just moving myself and my arm moves by proxy, but if you're that good and if there is a businessman or a CEO or any kind of company that operates based on racism, then they're going to go out of business, and that's the end of that. Because eventually all the good people will actually be in Apple, for example, and Microsoft is going to go bust. There'll be nothing left. But the crash is going to be coming, and when that happens, people will they'll just lose all their privileges, the ones that they have. And unfortunately, there'll be a lot of course, damage to infrastructure and all sorts of other things. And I'm not the only one who you're going to hear say this, but it's only logical to think of it this way. And while Mr. Peterson has his own reasons and his own methods to solving this, first of all, I don't think he has anywhere near the required conversion rate. Even if he has an army, even if he gets multiplied by 10, I still don't think 10 Jordan Petersons could turn this around. Maybe they would halt it or stop it, but it's not gonna work. Now, what about the government? What about the government? Would the government help us? No, in no case would the government help us. Why? Very simple, because as far as most governments are concerned, especially the government of America, which is centralized, right now America is waging 7 wars, of which you probably know only one. But war is profitable, and it keeps the economy running. Until there's war, as long as there's war, there's going to be the dollar. Well, the moment the war stops, the dollar stops. So you better hope that the Americans don't get nuked or don't lose a war, I suppose. But at the end of the day, at some point that dollar will crash, and the bigger that debt is, the bigger the issues are going to be for the world, not just for America, for the entire world, because that's what the economy is based on. And whether you are in England or in Germany or in America or in Canada, it doesn't matter. As long as you're one of those people who live in denial, you're going to be hit the hardest, because not only it will come out of the blue, but then you wouldn't even understand how to cope with it, because the government, at least no government at this point, has an interest in informing you. Politically correct movements and politically correct actions generate scandals. The media loves scandals. Scandals are very profitable. Kim Kardashian's ass is one of the most profitable things probably on this entire planet. And the only reason, by the way, I know about this is because I heard someone else say it about Kim Kardashian. I was actually Googled Kim Kardashian, and the moment I saw a picture, I realized I was just wasting my time. I closed it. But if I had to make a guess, probably she's some kind of a television star or a very famous person, and everything she does is revered. I don't know, maybe her farts are being sold for like $500 per cubic millimeter, but at the end of the day, it's just a sack of meat to me. Anyway, again, off point. But the main issue here is that you cannot stop this growth, and just let them burn, man. Just let them burn. Do your own thing. Learn as many skills as you can and let them burn. Because, like, you see, if the government doesn't support SJWs and PCs, then there's no drama and no scandal. And if there is no scandal and no drama, the media is going to be forced to report on the government. And then when all the dirty laundry comes out, first of all, most people probably will believe it, won't care, because politics are not something that a lot of people understand. Economy even less so. I mean, man, Socrates, I believe, had a quote. How did it go? If you don't get involved in politics, you are doomed to be ruled by idiots. So that's pretty much what it is. Along with others, like, for example, not everybody should be allowed to vote, because not everybody's qualified to vote. Maybe if there was an exam before voting, people would actually have a lot more success with their governments. But again, in my opinion, democracy only has an upper limit of a population. Open source is the way to go. But anyway, that's an entirely different point. So my case is as follows. Mr. Peterson is wrong because he misunderstands the root of the problem, and because the problem is economical, and he cannot save them, or you, if you're one of those clowns or jokers, or pick your poison. So yeah, that's it, guys. That's it for me. I'm not that kind of YouTuber, so I don't know why I decided to make this video, to be honest. I don't make a lot of videos. I don't make any videos. Especially not on social. I mean, I make videos, but not on social issues. I guess there's a first time for everything. All right, well, if you are by any chance Mr. Peterson, I mean, dude, I mean, I got respect for you. But I have no idea why you're wasting your time, really. Maybe it's just me. Maybe that's what I see on your face. But you seem tired, man. I mean, like, really tired. And I applaud your patience, at the very least, you know. Okay, well, I think that's enough rambling. Bye-bye.